Black Panther. I'm not rushing out to the theater to see Marvel movies like I once did. Like, I saw Iron Man 2 on opening night. Yeah, that one. And I saw Black Panther on a plane. Yep, that one. I admittedly just find the idea of a 20-plus movie interconnected universe to be kind of exhausting, and I also think that the amount of cultural real estate they're taking up in place of potentially more interesting things is a little troubling, but yeah, I like the movies that I've seen, which is about half of them. Specifically these ones, which means I've missed these ones. I've liked them all fine. And I say all that to qualify and give proper salt grain to this next statement, which is that Black Panther is probably the best MCU movie that I've seen. And the fact that it's one of the best versions of what it is isn't particularly surprising. The MCU movies that I've connected with the most, and have been the best ones per the general consensus, have been when producer Kevin Feige has given the keys to interesting and talented writer-directors who all brought their own unique perspective and brand to the material. And if Fruitvale Station and Creed taught us anything, it's that Ryan Coogler is certainly an interesting and talented writer-director. I mean, when working with a budget of less than $1 million on his first film, he made an interesting and affecting character drama. When given a mid-sized budget and the blessing of Sly Stallone to dip his toe into a franchise, he made an interesting and affecting character drama. When he had an enormous budget and the keys to a portion of the largest movie franchise to ever exist, he made an interesting and affecting... It'd be disingenuous to call it a character drama. This is a Marvel movie after all, but it's still really interesting. And while it's crazy to me that the guy who made what's now the third highest grossing movie of all time did so on his third time at bat, it kind of tracks. As his budget grew, so did his audience. Not many filmmakers have been able to pull off that indie to blockbuster growth, especially so quickly, so seamlessly, and so lucratively. So, in regard to Ryan Coogler's lack of a Best Director nomination, like, what do you want from this dude? Not that box office is completely indicative of quality, or even correlated to quality, but all of his movies have been really good. Do I think Black Panther is as good as Creed? No, but, my tastes kind of tend to skew towards lower budget character-driven stuff and not big budget spectacle, but do I think that Black Panther and Creed are of comparable quality for what they are? Yeah. At this point, I feel like the next logical step is to have Coogler write and direct the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, X-Men crossover, because where else do you really go from here? And I have no reason to think that that wouldn't be really good too. Anyway, to the 5 of you who haven't seen Black Panther or absorbed its specifics through cultural osmosis, it opens with a prologue explaining how a meteorite of vibranium landed in Africa millions of years ago. In what would be a bananas addendum to Guns, Germs, and Steel, 5 tribes find the vibranium and form the nation of Wakanda, using the vibranium to both develop super advanced technologies unseen elsewhere on Earth and hide those advanced technologies from the rest of the world, making them an isolationist nation that was never colonized, but that stood by and watched while every other African nation was colonized. The story proper begins with King T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, ascending the throne in the wake of his father's death, which took place in Captain America Civil War. Spoiler alert, I guess. And oh, by the way, King T'Challa has superhuman strength and agility from consuming the heart-shaped flower, which allows him to protect Wakanda as the Black Panther. A South African mercenary named Clow, played by Andy Serkis, stole 250,000 pounds of vibranium from Wakanda, and King T'Challa must decide whether or not he and his generals should go get Clow to bring him back to Wakanda to face justice. And okay, this movie's been out for a year. It made $1 billion. If you haven't seen it already, it's on Netflix. Do I really have to dance around Killmonger? Can I talk about this? Fine, no spoilers. Clow is working with this mysterious dude named Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, going around stealing vibranium from museums and doing things to get Wakanda's attention. Because this Killmonger dude has ulterior motives other than just enriching himself by selling vibranium. It's more interesting than that. Just go watch it. One thing that makes Ryan Coogler a great director is that he surrounds himself with talented people and is by all accounts a really great collaborator. He's had the same production designer, composer, and editor on all of his movies, and he would have had the same cinematographer, but Rachel Morrison got pregnant just before principal photography for Creed. And all the individual pieces of Black Panther are pretty great. You know, those individual pieces that collectively make movie magic that the Academy assumes you don't care about. You should care. Yeah, you kind of expect the sound editors and sound mixers to get nominated for a movie like this, but Ruth E. Carter is nominated for her textured and detailed costume design. First time a superhero movie has gotten that nomination. Production designer Hannah Beachler somehow made a bunch of blue screens in Atlanta look like an Afrofuturist utopia, and she's Oscar nominated. Only the third superhero movie nominated in that category. In Good Company. And by the way, they actually built this waterfall. That's pretty crazy. Composer Ludwig Göransson is nominated. First superhero score since Superman to be recognized by the Academy. Do I think Göransson's score is half as good as John Williams' Superman score? No, I don't even think it's as good as Danny Elfman's Spider-Man score, but I like Ludwig Göransson. I realize one has literally nothing to do with the other, but I kind of want Ludwig Göransson to win Oscars solely because of his work with Childish Gambino. Like this song. Yeah, that's same dude. And of course, Ryan Coogler brings his most important and successful collaboration to Black Panther, Michael B. Jordan. There's just something about that dude that I find inherently compelling. Like, yeah, I think he's a great actor, but every time he's on screen in Black Panther, I find myself leaning forward, enthralled. Michael B. Jordan, both performance and character, seems to be a consensus highlight of the movie. When it first came out, it seemed to me that the thing that everyone was talking about was the villain and how his point of view was defensible, which makes for an instantly more compelling movie. I went to a writer-director panel discussion last week where Robin Swycord said that your protagonist shrinks to the size of your antagonist. Basically, because the villain in Black Panther has a defensible point of view, that means the hero is implicitly fighting in a bit of a gray area. Neither the side he's fighting for nor the side he's fighting against is clearly right or clearly wrong, at least not ideologically. This is called nuance. And of all the great pieces of Black Panther, I really think its greatest strength and what sets it apart is its screenplay. It's built on a central ideological conflict, and that central conflict kind of percolates into every aspect of the story. The conflict stems from Wakanda's millions of years of protectionism and their inaction during the colonization of Africa. One side embodied by King T'Challa, one side embodied by Killmonger. And just about every scene, damn near every line of dialogue, is about that central conflict. The whole business with Clow in the front half of the movie is a microcosm for the larger T'Challa-Killmonger conflict. More on that in a minute. In back-to-back scenes in Act 1, T'Challa has conversations with his love interest, Nakia, played by Lupita Nyong'o, and his general, W'Kabi, played by Daniel Kaluuya, where they discuss the nuances of this expansionism versus protectionism conflict, vis-a-vis accepting refugees or using their considerable military might to invade other countries. In these conversations, T'Challa kind of defends both sides because he's working through the issue himself, ultimately trying to decide what kind of leader he wants to be, both as the king of a nation and as a literal superhero. As Van Newark succinctly put it, writing in The Atlantic, it's a feature-length rumination on the comic book axiom, with great power comes great responsibility, applied to an entire nation.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Spider-Man's question was how to responsibly use his newfound power, i.e. beat up Flash Thompson and get a car to impress Mary Jane, or fight crime to prevent things like Uncle Ben's carjacking. It's personal stakes. T'Challa's responsibility is more difficult to define, and that's part of his struggle in the movie. He feels a responsibility to his country, as he wants to be a good leader and protector. He feels a responsibility to his father to honor his legacy, which is later complicated when he learns less than satisfactory things about his father. But he also feels a responsibility to all people of African descent, who were displaced and slaughtered by the millions while Wakanda stood by and did nothing. How much responsibility should T'Challa take on for the sins of his father, both in a literal sense and in a figurative ancestral sense? This too makes Killmonger a fascinating adversary because he, not to give too much away, is a direct product of the sins of T'Challa's father and an indirect product of the sins of T'Challa's ancestors. There's a lot going on here. Oh, I said the stuff about Clow was a microcosm for the larger conflict. T'Challa and his generals debate whether or not they should venture out into the world to go get Clow, which is a part of the expansionist versus protectionist whole. But also, to those of you who know what Killmonger's all about, Do you think it's an accident that T'Challa's generals want justice for a white South African stealing precious resources from their African nation? In the corners of the internet where I spend way too much time, I've seen a lot of complaints about Black Panther's Best Picture nomination. The most common complaint I've heard was that it supposedly wasn't even the best superhero movie of the year. I don't know if this will be a controversial opinion, but I really enjoyed Infinity War. It's an impressive juggling act of so many characters and storylines, and it builds really well. But it also kind of has no character development, and in some cases even character regression in the case of Peter Quill. And it is, lest we all forget, half a movie. Black Panther, on the other hand, has real-world ideas without easy answers, and characters weighing heavy questions of identity, power, and justice in a micro and macro sense. It's a standalone superhero movie that really does work on its own terms, even if you haven't seen a single other movie in the MCU, which can't really say the same here. But it also fits into the larger whole as a piece of the MCU. Would I put it in my personal top 8 for 2018? Probably not, but Best Picture is hard to define. The Ringer did a podcast last month discussing what exactly it means to be Best Picture, and they landed on a intersection of innovation, craft, vision, performances, virtue, fearlessness, and commercialism. That sounds about right. But regardless, Coogler made a movie grappling with ancestry and funneled his own personal struggles of feeling disconnected from Africa as an African American, and he did it within the confines of a giant blockbuster superhero spectacle. He used the most popular storytelling format of the day to tell a complex, fresh, entertaining story. And whether or not it was one of the 8 best movies I saw last year, that's certainly something.